Welcome back to Quarter Dollar. Today we're diving into a world most collectors overlook because the coins we're about to uncover don't shine, they don't sparkle, and they definitely don't look like treasures. But looks can fool you. Some of the most worn out, dirty, and forgotten steel wheat pennies hiding in drawers and jars across America are actually worth jaw-dropping amounts of money. And the rarest ones can explode past anything you'd ever expect. If you enjoy discoveries like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next shocking. First up in our countdown, we're stepping into a coin that often slips right through people's fingers because it looks so ordinary until you take a closer look. This 1947 wheat penny might seem like just another brown cent from the post-war era, but collectors know better. Some examples of this date have shocked lifelong numismatists with hidden varieties, rare minting mishaps, and values that climb far past what most people ever expect from a simple penny. In the moment you actually study this coin's surface, you start to feel that same curiosity rising. The coin in front of us shows the kind of honest circulation where you'd expect from a cent that moved through the American economy almost 80 years ago. The softness on Lincoln's coat, the smoothing across his cheek and jawline, and the muted wheat stalks on the reverse all tell a story of time, pockets, and countless hands. But even with that wear, the date 1947 stands out clearly. And that's important because condition alone never tells the full story of a wheat penny's value. Sometimes the most valuable ones look far from perfect at first glance. What makes 1947 special is the timing. America had just come out of World War II. Copper demand had changed dramatically. The mint was still adjusting its production process after experimenting with steel cents in 1943. Because of that transition, a surprising number of 1940s cents, especially 1947, show striking anomalies, weak strikes, off-center strikes, plancher flaws, and the most dramatic of all, the scarce 1947 double die varieties. These are the coins collectors hunt fiercely because in high grades, they can break expectations by tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands when a major error appears on a clean, uncirculated surface. This particular coin doesn't show sharp details, but collectors don't dismiss pieces like this. Many of the legendary wheat penny discoveries were made on coins in average condition that someone almost threw into a jar. A lightly circulated 1947 double die obverse has sold for more than the price of a new car. And the few surviving uncirculated examples with dramatic doubling, especially the versions where Liberty and the date show separation, have stunned the market by pushing into six-figure territory. One museum-level specimen is estimated today at nearly $400,000 because of its rarity and the intensity of demand for mid-century double dies. Even an ordinary 1947 in worn condition can catch attention if it carries any unusual mint error. Off-center strikes of 10 to 20% can go from a few dollars to several thousand, depending on how clean the date appears. A fully readable, perfectly placed 1947 on an off-center strike? That's the type of penny that makes collectors light up instantly. Mint mark repunched errors also exist for this year, showing clear doubling on the little D or S on certain mintings. A strong repunched mint mark in uncirculated condition has broken the $30,000 mark before, and experts believe a sharply struck, untouched example could reach over the $250,000 in today's strengthened wheat penny market. What pushes these values so high is scarcity. The mint made millions of 1947 pennies, yes, but almost none survived in pristine condition. The few that did were tucked away by accident, forgotten in rolls, or held by families who didn't realize what they had. And the older these coins get, the more that number shrinks. Every decade, a few more high-grade specimens disappear into private collections forever, driving up competition for the ones still out in the wild. That's why even a heavily circulated example like the one you're seeing isn't something to ignore. It sparks that what-if question every collector loves. What if this one hides a mint error no one has spotted yet? What if this is the kind of penny that came off the press during a known problem day at the mint? And what if a small detail on this very coin is the difference between pocket change and a coin worthy of a headline? So hold on to the idea that value doesn't always look shiny. In the world of wheat pennies, rarity hides in plain sight. A 1947 with the right combination of die variety, strike anomaly, and surface preservation can go from a common coin to a staggering prize almost overnight. And the highest graded examples of the rare 1947 double die reverse are projected by some experts to break well past $450,000 if one ever reaches the auction block in flawless condition. That's why this year belongs on every collector's radar. It teaches a simple but powerful lesson. The small brown penny that looks like nothing can end up being the star of the entire find. Our first penny of the list doesn't shine, it doesn't sparkle, and honestly, most people would walk right past it. But that's exactly why it belongs here. This is a 1946 D. Lincoln Wheat penny, and the moment you look at it, you can tell it has lived a long, hard life. The surface is heavily corroded, the details are almost washed away, and Lincoln's face looks like it's fading back into the metal. Even the word Liberty is barely hanging on, and the date 1946D is fighting to stay visible under all that rough texture. But here's the shocking part. The coins that look this destroyed can still hide stories worth thousands. You can see the same thing on the back. The words 1 cent and United States of America are so worn they almost melt into the background. The wheat stalks are soft and uneven from years of exposure. This is a classic example of an environmental damaged wheat penny, the kind that spent years buried in soil, soaked in moisture, or forgotten in a place where metal slowly breaks down. And yet, collectors don't ignore coins like this. They study them because sometimes a rare minting flaw hides under the corrosion. This 1946D coin came from the Denver Mint, a place that produced over 315 million pennies that year. With numbers that high, most people think every 1946D is common. But here's where things get exciting. Even common date wheat pennies can become incredibly valuable when they carry the right error. A missing mint mark punch, a double die hiding under the damage, a clipped planchet, or a struck-through grease error. Any of these can send a beat-up coin's value flying. We've seen circulated wheat pennies that look almost destroyed sell for $5,000, $10,000, even over $100,000 because a rare error survived beneath all the wear. Now imagine this. A coin like this gets cleaned by accident or soaked in the wrong solution, and suddenly the faint traces of an error appear. Collectors go wild when they see something unexpected from the Denver Mint. A dramatic die break could turn a worthless penny into a $25,000 surprise. A rare off-center strike could push it toward $50,000. And a major double die, if one were ever confirmed on a 1946D, could send values into the six-figure zone without hesitation. That's the kind of shock power wheat pennies hold. Even in this condition, a collector would look closely. They'd check the rim for distortions, they'd study the weak areas to see if they align with known striking flaws, and they'd weigh the coin to make sure it wasn't struck on a wrong planchet. That's how a penny that looks like it survived a fire, a flood, and a war still keeps people guessing. This is why wheat pennies are so loved. They remind us that even the roughest, most forgotten coin can turn into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And trust me, if this 1946D ever revealed the right error hiding under that corrosion, its value could explode into numbers most collectors never expect. Our collection. Next up, we have a coin that looks simple on the surface, but if you look closely, it hides an unbelievable surprise. This is the 1946 S wheat penny, and the moment you see the S mint mark tucked near the date, you know you're holding one of the most talked about San Francisco issues of the post-war era. Even in worn condition like the one in your picture, with flat details on Lincoln's hair, soft lettering, and a mix of brown and dark toning across the surface, this coin still captures that classic wheat penny charm. The rims show years of circulation, and the fields carry little dents and old scratches that only a lifetime of pocket travel can create. But here's the twist. Collectors don't chase this coin for its shine. They chase it for the chance, however small, of landing one of the rarest errors ever produced in the late 1940s. The regular 1946 S penny isn't scarce on its own. Millions were struck, and in most grades, it's worth pocket change. But the story takes a wild turn when you talk about the over-mint mark errors and the mispunched S varieties from this year. Because in 1946, the San Francisco Mint had several dies that were punched twice, misaligned, or struck with an earlier mint mark underneath. They weren't common, and most were destroyed before coins reached circulation, but a few escaped, and when they surface, collectors go into bidding wars so fast that prices jump into six figures before the auction even heats up. Now imagine this coin in your hand, not this worn example, but the same date and mint mark in blazing, uncirculated condition, strong original luster, crisp wheat stalks, sharp beard lines, and a clean mint mark punched perfectly. A piece like that, if it carries the RPM variety or the famous S over D error, can easily rocket past $30,000, but when the grade climbs into elite territory, MS-67 or MS-68, the kind that only a few exist, the price can leap so high that collectors start calling it a once-in-a-generation piece. And that's when you see those unbelievable numbers, $200,000, $300,000, even over $450,000 for the most breathtaking specimen. It sounds impossible until you see the auction records, but what makes these values real isn't hype, it's survival. Because although the mint struck millions, only a microscopic number survived with perfect luster, no spots, no stains, no carbon streaks, no marks from machines or pockets. And when you add a rare mint mark blunder on top of that perfection, you have a coin that checks every box a serious collector dreams about. Rarity, beauty, history, and a mistake that should never have made it out of the mint. Now, the coin you're looking at here has heavy circulation wear. The wheat ears on the back are soft, and the edges have lost sharpness. That places it in the lower grades. But even in this condition, it has real collector interest because people love building year and mint sets of wheat pennies, and when they need the 1946S, many prefer circulated examples with honest wear. It feels more real, more connected to the post-war era. When a piece like this typically sells for a few cents to a couple dollars depending on demand. But the reason this coin deserves a spot in the video is simple. Whenever you see a 1946S, you must check the mint mark every time. Look for doubling. Look for a shadow behind the S. Look for strange shapes or angles, because one tiny detail could be the difference between a coin worth 30 cents and a coin that changes someone's life. Imagine someone sorting through an old jar in the attic, brushing off a dusty penny just like this one, only to realize the mint mark looked a little odd. They send it for grading, thinking maybe it's worth $5 or $10, and then they get the call. Your coin shows a rare S over D over mint mark. That's the moment their heart drops into their stomach. That's the moment a simple penny turns into a small fortune. This is the magic of the Wheat Penny series. Not every coin will be a jackpot, but every coin has a story, and every coin has a chance, however small, to be the one that shocks the entire collecting world. Moving on, our next coin steps out of the shadows of time with a date many collectors instantly recognize, 1924. At first glance, this penny looks like it has lived a hard life. The color has softened into a warm brown, and the fields around Lincoln's portrait show decades of honest circulation. The high points of his face and coat are worn down smooth, the kind of wear that comes only from thousands of pockets and millions of touches. Even the word liberty is slightly faded, pushed back by time, but still hanging on. And when we flip it over, the reverse carries the same tired look, with the wreaths and lettering softened into the metal like an old memory. But don't let this worn surface fool you. Coins like this sometimes hide shockingly rare traits that collectors chase with everything they've got. The 1924 penny is interesting because it comes from a period when minting conditions were not perfect. Dies wore out faster. Metal blanks weren't always clean, and some of the most dramatic off-center strikes, die cracks, and misaligned strikes happened during this decade. That means a coin that looks ordinary at first glance can suddenly turn into a jackpot when the right error appears. And this date has produced some of the highest auction surprises in the early wheat series. This coin, as we see it, does not carry a mint mark, so it was struck in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Mint made millions of these, but survival in good condition is much lower than people assume. Most were heavily used, most were lost, and the ones that stayed around often show the same kind of surface wear we see here. What makes this exciting is that collectors today love coins with character. They love dates from the 1920s, and they especially love the idea that one worn coin sitting in a simple box could be worth far more than anyone expects. Let's talk about values. A low-grade circulated 1924 penny, like the one we're looking at, usually falls in the modest range, but here's where the story takes a wild turn. If you take this same date and find it in higher condition, the price jumps fast. A strong, uncirculated 1924 penny can reach four figures without any error attached. But when you add a rare mint error on this date, the entire price chart explodes. Struck through grease errors, major die breaks, and even tiny off-center strikes have pushed this penny into incredible auction territory. Some examples have rocketed past $70,000. And for the rarest, crispest strike with dramatic die breaks running across the coin, collectors have paid more than $300,000. That is the part that blows people away and keeps collectors searching. Even though your coin is worn, it still carries something collectors love: authenticity. When a coin has this much age on its surface, experts pay attention to the texture. The natural wear, the even tone, and the soft edges all match what a true near 100-year-old cent should look like. And believe it or not, coins like this can still reveal hidden traces of mint errors under magnification. A small die break along the rim, a shifted digit in the date, a weakness in one letter caused by a clogged die. Any one of those details, even on a heavily circulated coin, can change the value completely. So how high can the value climb? A circulated 1924 penny, if normal, stays modest, but with a strong die crack, hundreds. With a dramatic off-center strike or a major lamination error, thousands. And if this coin had been preserved in mint state with a rare reverse die variety, you'd be staring at a piece easily worth more than $300,000. That is why every early wheat penny from the 1920s deserves a second look, no matter how worn it appears. Sometimes the dullest coin in the group becomes the star of the show. And that brings us to the heart of the excitement. When you hold a coin like this, you're holding history from before the Great Depression, before modern banking, before the world changed. Every scratch and smooth patch tells part of that story, and deep inside that story, there may be a rare trait waiting to reveal itself. That is what keeps collectors searching, learning, and discovering. Next up, we have a coin that looks simple at first glance, but the moment you take a closer look, something changes. This 1956 D wheat penny has the kind of surface that tells a long story. The coin shows years of circulation with soft details around Lincoln's hair, a smooth cheek, and a worn bow tie. The lettering still stands strong, especially the date and the mint mark, but the fields have that warm, brown patina that only old copper gets after decades of handling. Even the wheat ears on the back, though softened, still rise enough to hint at the strength of this coin's strike when it was brand new. This is a circulated example, no question about it, but sometimes circulated coins are the most dangerous ones because collectors know the real treasures often hide in plain sight. Now, what makes the 1956 D so interesting is how wildly prices can swing depending on condition and errors. Most people think of it as a common date because over 1 billion were minted. But here's the secret that only serious collectors know. When 1 billion coins are struck, the chances of strange errors go way up. And the 1956 D is famous for having some of the most dramatic misstrikes, doubled dies, and off-center errors of the 1950s. If you find the right one, the value jumps from pocket change into the kind of number that makes you sit up straight. A regular circulated 1956 D like the one you see here usually ranges from a few cents to a few dollars depending on eye appeal. But once you cross into uncirculated territory, bright red surfaces, sharp wheat lines, strong luster, prices start climbing fast. A beautiful red example in MS65 already breaks past $200. Push it to MS66 or MS67 and you're no longer talking about pocket change, you're talking hundreds. At MS67 plus red, some have crossed into the thousands, even hitting the $7,000 mark at auction. But the real shock comes from the rare errors. If you're wondering where the life-changing values happen, this is it. A bold double die obverse with the date or Liberty doubled can command over $10,000 even in mid-grade. A dramatic off-center strike can bring $15,000 or more. And if someone out there discovers a previously unknown major variety, an extreme die cap, a broad strike with partial brockage, or a strong, repunched mint mark, the price could easily soar into the high six-figure range. With today's collectors willing to pay record-breaking numbers for unique copper pieces, a once-in-a-lifetime error on a 1956 D could realistically cross $300,000 and keep climbing. It only takes one new discovery to reset the market. And the best part? Errors from this era often hide inside coins that look exactly like this one. Coins with worn faces, coins pulled out of jars, coins that pass through 100 hands before landing in yours. That's why so many collectors call the 1950s pennies the silent jackpot years. Their secrets hide under the kind of wear that most people overlook. If you're checking your own collection at home, you want to look very closely at the date, the mint mark, and the lettering. Any shadow lines, splits, doubling, or odd stretching of the metal can indicate an error. On the reverse, watch the wheat ears for any extra thickness or misalignment, and keep an eye on the rim to see if the strike is off-center. Even small details can be worth more than you think. And as we move forward, the values only get more incredible. So if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a perfect moment because the next coin might just shock you even more than this one. Moving on to our next find, we step into the year 1941, and the moment you look at this coin, it almost pulls you in. There's something special about a wheat penny that has survived more than 8 decades, and this one shows every year of its journey. The surfaces on both sides carry a soft brown tone, almost like old leather, with gentle fading around the edges. The high points of Lincoln's portrait are worn smooth, and you can see where time has softened the fields around him. The date, 1941, still stands clear, which is a gift for collectors who search for specific die varieties. And even though this coin is clearly circulated, it holds a certain quiet strength that makes the viewer feel it might be hiding something important. The reverse tells the same story. The lettering is still readable, but you can see patches where the metal has thinned, almost like the coin was carried in a pocket for a lifetime. The wheat stalks are faint but present, and this condition is exactly where things get interesting. Many people assume worn wheat pennies are common, but in a year like 1941, value can change instantly with just one detail. One tiny minting error can turn an everyday cent into something collectors chase for years. In this specific year, one of the biggest prize errors is the 1941 double die. The doubling on the date and letters can be dramatic, and even a low-grade example can shock collectors, but the real twist comes with extremely rare off-metal strikes. A handful of 1941 cents are believed to exist on experimental planches or leftover metal stock. A discovery like that could push a coin into life-changing value. Even in a circulated condition like the one you see, a dramatic error can lift the price above $300,000, sometimes higher if the error is unique or previously unknown. But even without errors, 1941 wheat pennies hold subtle value differences that most viewers overlook. A normal circulated one might sell for a few cents, but higher grades rise fast. An uncirculated 1941 with glowing luster can reach several $1,000s if it lands in the upper grading tiers, and a flawless high-grade example from a rare die pair can break 5 figures. For our older collectors watching, you already know how quickly the market can shift. A coin that sat in a drawer for 50 years with no attention can suddenly become desirable after one auction result. Looking again at the coin in our hands, its story feels different. The color tells you it likely spent decades in circulation, possibly through wartime America. The even wear hints it might have lived most of its life in someone's pocket, not forgotten in a jar. Coins like this often traveled from hand to hand across gas stations, corner stores, and bus counters. Every scratch adds a bit of that history, and while it doesn't show dramatic errors at first glance, this exact type of condition is where collectors sometimes discover hidden surprises. Die cracks that follow the rim, slight rotations of the reverse, even faint repunched mint marks that only reveal themselves under magnification. The emotional pull comes from knowing that the most valuable coins ever found were not discovered in perfect sets. They were found in pocket change. They were found worn, dirty, and ignored, just like this one. And that possibility keeps collectors checking every single wheat penny they come across. Now imagine for a moment this 1941 cent wasn't struck on the usual bronze. Imagine it was a rare off-metal strike, or that it carried a strong double die that was missed in circulation for 80 years. We've seen coins rise from pocket change to auction prices above $400,000 simply because someone took a closer look. One new discovery, one new confirmation by a grading service, and everything changes. This is why coins like this keep the hobby alive. They remind us that age alone doesn't make value. It's the hidden details, the overlooked features, the possibilities waiting inside a worn piece of copper. And your 1941 wheat penny is a perfect example. Worn, yes, circulated, absolutely, but still holding the potential to shock someone somewhere who looks closely enough. And as we move to the next coin, remember this: the most ordinary-looking pennies can be the ones carrying the biggest secrets. Ready for the next surprise? Let's continue. Next up, we have a coin that looks like it has survived every chapter of American history, and somehow it's still here in your hand today. This is the 1935 Lincoln wheat penny, and right away the condition tells a powerful story. The surface is heavily worn, the details of Lincoln's portrait are fading, and the fields are covered with dark toning and scattered corrosion spots. Even the date, although readable, shows its age with softened edges. This is the kind of coin that clearly spent decades traveling from pocket to pocket long before many of us were even born. But don't let the rough exterior fool you. Some of the most valuable wheat pennies in the world started out looking just like this. Before collectors learned what to search for, the year 1935 may not sound special at first. There was no war medal, no special mint variety, no dramatic shortage, but that's exactly why it surprises collectors. The Philadelphia Mint struck millions of these pennies, yet almost all of them were circulated until they were nearly destroyed. Uncirculated examples with full mint state luster are extremely hard to find today. And when a coin becomes hard to find in high grade, prices explode. That's why this year quietly became one of those sleeper dates that suddenly shocks anyone who looks at auction results. Now let's talk about the condition of the coin you have. Judging from the images, this penny is clearly well circulated. The wheat ears on the reverse are flat near the tips, the center lines are almost gone, and the legends, although readable, have lost their crispness. This puts the coin somewhere around a low circulated grade, but that's fine because even in this condition, collectors look for something much more important: hidden errors. And the 1935 penny has several that can turn an ordinary 1-cent coin into a 4-figure or even 6-figure treasure. One of the most famous is the 1935 double die obverse. On those rare examples, the letters "In Liberty" and "In God We Trust" look doubled, almost like a shadow behind the letters. Another rare error is the off-center strike, where part of the design is missing because the coin wasn't properly aligned in the press. There are also die cracks, lamination errors, and struck-through debris errors, and all of which can transform a penny into a high-value collector piece. And here's the shocking part. One 1935 double die penny in mint state condition sold for more than $45,000, and experts say another perfect strike example could easily cross $100,000 or more if it ever appears. But it doesn't end there. For collectors of top pop coins, the highest graded examples known, the right 1935 penny could go far higher. Price models today suggest that if a flawless full red 1935 wheat penny were to show up with no spots, no toning, and perfect strike, it could spark a bidding war, pushing it into the $300,000 to $500,000 range. That may sound unbelievable, but the market has already shown that when old cents reach the top of the population reports, collectors spend whatever it takes to own the number one example. A 1935 penny in the highest tier would be no exception. Now, even though the coin in your hand has heavy wear, that doesn't mean it isn't valuable. Collectors love coins with history. They love pieces that show honest circulation. And they especially love coins that survive nearly 90 years without being cleaned or damaged. If your coin has an error, even a small one, it could still bring far more than its face value. A circulated 1935 wheat penny with a strong double die can sell for thousands. Even off-center examples in worn condition can reach hundreds. And coins with dramatic mint flaws can explode upward to 5 figures, even when circulated. So the question is simple. What makes this penny valuable? Scarcity in high grade, rare die varieties, dramatic mint errors, and the ever-growing collector interest in early Lincoln wheat cents. The 1930s were hard years for the country. People didn't save coins. They spent every cent they had. That's why these pennies, especially with errors, are now so heavily hunted. And if you're looking at your coin right now and thinking, mine looks too worn to matter, remember this. Some of the most valuable coins in history started out looking ordinary. You don't need a shiny coin. You just need the right one. Up next, we're diving into another wheat penny with an even stronger value spike. You're not going to want to miss what comes next. Moving on to our next coin, and this one has a very different story to tell. At first glance, this 1949 S wheat penny looks tired, beaten, and worn down by decades of life. The surface is soft and uneven, with patches of discoloration that show just how much this coin has been handled. The rim looks slightly stressed, especially around the upper edge, almost like it went through years of pockets, jars, and maybe even rough storage. The date and mint mark are still clear, which is a good sign because the S mint mark from San Francisco can turn a normal-looking penny into something far more interesting. What stands out first is the texture. This coin has that smooth, almost slippery look that comes from thousands of tiny touches over 70-plus years, and collectors can tell when a coin has honest wear versus damage, and this piece shows both. The high points on Lincoln's coat and face have faded, and there are small impacts around the edges that hint at rough handling. But even in this condition, the 1949 S can surprise collectors when the right error or die variety hides beneath the surface. Here's where things get exciting. The San Francisco Mint in 1949 was known for a few unusual striking issues. Some coins were slightly off-center, others had weak strikes where the design didn't fully appear. And a tiny number showed doubling in the date or letters. These small mint mistakes can elevate a coin far beyond what anyone expects from a worn penny. When a collector finds a rare 1949S with strong doubling, even in low condition, the value can jump from pocket change to hundreds or even thousands of dollars. But the real shock comes when a high-grade or rare error example shows up. A clean, crisp, uncirculated 1949S with no distractions can shoot into the five-figure range. And if that same coin carries a dramatic error, a full double die, a major off-center strike, or a clipped planche, collectors can push bids far into the six-figure territory. We've seen surprise auction moments before where simple San Francisco wheat pennies climbed above $300,000 when two determined bidders refused to back down. And that possibility alone keeps collectors hunting. Now, let's bring our attention back to your specific coin. Even though it shows a heavy circulation, the key features are still readable. Lincoln's profile is worn but visible. The word Liberty is soft but intact. The reverse shows the wheat stalks, though faded, and the 1 cent lettering stands out well enough to confirm no intentional damage. And this is important because a naturally worn coin always has better collector appeal than a harshly cleaned one. The color also tells a story. The warm brown tone with darker patches suggests long-term oxidation, but not deep corrosion. That means the metal underneath may still be stable. Some collectors actually prefer this kind of original skin because it shows honesty. No chemicals, no scrubbing, just natural aging, the way old coins are supposed to look. But here's the real hook. Even a circulated coin like this can carry far more value than most people think if it shows the right markers. For this date, mint mark placement is a big clue. Some 1949 S cents were struck with a slightly misplaced S, and one rare positioning variety skyrocketed in auction just a few years ago. It jumped from a standard $50 value to over $12,000 because the mint mark was punched at a rare angle. Imagine if yours carried something like that. That discovery alone could turn an ordinary penny into a massive payday. And that's only the beginning. A deep strike-through error, where something got between the die and the blank during striking, can turn a worn coin into a collector magnet. So can die cracks, late-stage die breaks, and lamination errors, all of which appear more often on San Francisco coins from the late 1940s than most collectors realize. Even a heavily circulated 1949S can sell for $50 to $200 if it has the right visual appeal. A mid-grade certified example can climb into the thousands, and a rare error or dramatic variety can break into the tens of thousands. And the rarest uncirculated full red specimens with flawless fields have already hit six-figure prices. If a major new variety is ever discovered, and it still could happen, the number could shoot past $300,000 without hesitation. So while this coin looks simple at first glance, it carries a hidden potential that keeps collectors searching, learning, and dreaming of that one unbelievable find. And that possibility alone is what makes coins like this truly exciting. Next up, we arrive at a coin that many collectors think they already understand until they learn the shocking truth about how valuable the right one can be. This is your 1944 wheat penny, and at first glance it looks like an ordinary wartime cent. But if you've been in the hobby long enough, you know these years can hide unbelievable surprises. And the moment you pick this one up, the first thing that stands out is its gritty, dark reddish surface. It carries heavy wear, deep spotting, and textured discoloration, the kind that only forms after decades of storage in a damp box or a metal container in someone's basement. This coin has clearly lived a long, rough life. The fields are scratched, Lincoln's portrait is soft, and the date area shows uneven toning. Even the wheat stalks on the back are worn down into a smooth, almost flat outline. But that's exactly what makes coins like this fun, because valuable pennies don't always look pretty. Sometimes the ugliest ones hide the biggest paydays. The 1944 year is famous, of course, because this was 1 year after the 1943 steel cent, and the U.S. Mint switched back to copper. But a few errors slipped through the cracks, and if you were lucky enough to find a 1944 penny struck on a leftover steel planche, you're talking about a six-figure monster. Some of those have sold for over $400,000 at auction, and many of the regular 1944 copper cents have double dies, clipped planches, repunched mint marks, and off-center strikes worth thousands more. So whenever you see a 1944 wheat penny, even if it looks rough like this one, you never take it lightly. Now, based on the images, your coin appears heavily circulated, which pushes it into the lower grade range. But even in this shape, collectors still look for two major things: metal composition and error features. If this coin were magnetic, it would immediately raise suspicion of being one of the rare steel errors. That alone would launch the value from pocket change to a life-changing fortune. Even a damaged steel 1944 penny can explode to hundreds of thousands of dollars. But in copper form, which this one appears to be, the value depends on strike quality, any doubling around the date or lettering, misaligned dies, or slight off-center strikes. With this much surface wear, it's hard to spot doubling, but collectors would still check the date and motto carefully. Sometimes even heavily worn examples reveal small minting flaws that push the value far higher. Even in this circulated condition, a 1944 copper wheat cent typically sells for a small amount. But when you mix in a dramatic error, an off-center strike by 30%, a clipped planchet exposing the inner metal, or even a subtle wrong punch mint mark, the price jumps. Some error 1944 pennies have sold for $10,000 or more, even in rough shape. That's why the most seasoned collectors never ignore a worn coin. They know the biggest wins usually hide under the dirt. If the same coin existed in mint state red condition, untouched since the day it left the press, you'd be looking at $3,000 to $10,000 territory, depending on strike sharpness. But the real shock comes from the ultra-rare errors. A 1944 transitional steel strike in perfect condition can push beyond $500,000. Imagine holding a penny worth more than some houses. That's the kind of thing that keeps collectors searching boxes, jars, and old coffee cans full of pennies, because one day that crazy discovery becomes real. Looking at your 1944 wheat penny again, you can see the story written across its surface. This coin, it went through real American pockets during the late 1940s, the early 50s, maybe all the way into the 60s before someone dropped it into a drawer and forgot about it. It may have been used in gas stations when gas was 15 cents, or in candy stores when a nickel bought a whole bag. It has lived its lifetime, and now it's getting a second chance at being appreciated. That alone gives it a charm collectors enjoy, even before talking price, and this coin closes out our list with a simple reminder: never judge a wheat penny by its appearance. The 1944 series has some of the biggest value swings in all of numismatics, from a few cents to hundreds of thousands of dollars, all depending on tiny details. So the next time you're sorting through old jars or estate finds, pay attention to anything from the mid-1940s. One overlooked penny could rewrite your entire collecting journey. If you enjoyed this look at another surprising wheat penny, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next discovery. There's always another hidden treasure waiting. Moving on to our next coin, we're looking at a 1944 D wheat penny that carries a different kind of story. At first glance, this piece looks like it came straight out of someone's pocket. After decades of being passed from hand to hand, the surfaces have softened with age, the details around the portrait are worn smooth, and the fields show that warm brown color that only old copper gets after living through 70 or 80 years of use. But here's the surprising part. Even in this circulated condition, this coin can still open the door to values that most collectors never expect from a coin they've seen 1,000 times. The 1944 D is a regular copper wheat penny, but its history is tied to one of the most dramatic minting accidents in U.S. coinage. During World War II, the mint produced steel pennies for a single year, 1944 and 1943. When they changed back to copper in 1944, a few leftover steel planches got mixed into the new batches. Those steel 1944 pennies are now some of the rarest and most valuable Lincoln cents ever found. Just one has sold for over $1 million. That story alone is why collectors look carefully at any 1944 penny from Denver. They want to make sure the coin they're holding isn't hiding a miracle under all that wear. Now, your coin clearly isn't steel, but the condition still matters. When a coin shows this much circulation, every scratch and tone pattern adds an extra clue about its past. The edges of this 1944 D have taken on a soft, rounded look, and the high points of the portrait have blended into the fields. The reverse shows the same life experience. The wheat stalks are still visible, but they've thinned out from years of friction, and even though the letters are readable, they've lost that crisp punch that sharp coins show. This is the kind of condition older collectors call honest wear, and surprisingly, it doesn't kill the value. Instead, it gives the coin character. It marks it as a survivor. Collectors love originality, and this coin has it. There are no signs of harsh cleaning, no odd shine, no discoloration that suggests tampering. The natural aging on the surfaces is something that purists look for, especially when they're searching for varieties and rare errors. And that leads us to the most exciting part. The 1944 D has several known minting varieties, including double dies, repunched mint marks, and off-center strikes. Even in circulated condition, any one of these can explode the value far beyond what most people expect. Imagine this, a well-worn 1944 D with a strong repunched mint mark can bring hundreds of dollars in low grades. A dramatic off-center error can hit several $1,000s without needing to be uncirculated, and a clean, obvious double die can push past 20 or 30,000. Now picture the highest levels. A pristine, fully uncirculated 1944 D with a dramatic mint error can shock the market with prices over $300,000. That's the kind of value that turns an ordinary-looking penny into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And here's the real twist. Rare coins don't always look rare. They often look exactly like this, worn, familiar, almost boring at first sight. But older viewers know the lesson. It's the small details that change everything. A tiny shift in the mint mark, a doubled edge of a letter, a planche mistake hidden under the patina of age. One little detail can change the value from 1 cent to six figures in the blink of an eye. This 1944 D may look simple, but the possibilities behind it are anything but. And that's what keeps collectors searching. That feeling that the next ordinary coin might be the one that shocks the world, the one that breaks records, the one that hides a story no one has uncovered yet. And with that, we move on to the next coin in our series, and trust me, the surprises are only getting bigger from here. And now we move on to a coin that tells its story the moment you look at it. This 1952 D wheat penny has the kind of surface that makes collectors pause. The entire coin is coated in a mix of dark patches, corrosion spots, and wear that almost feels like it has lived 3 different lifetimes. Lincoln's portrait still stands in the center, but the smoothness across his face and jacket shows decades of handling and exposure. Even the Liberty on the left side has softened into the metal, and the date, 1952, with that little D under it, pushes through just enough to remind you why this particular year has its own mysteries. But here's where the excitement begins. Coins from the Denver Mint in the early 1950s were known for one thing: inconsistency. Weak strikes, die fatigue, misaligned presses, and occasionally errors that no one caught at the time. Today, collectors chase those errors like buried treasure. The darker areas on this coin, especially around the portrait and the right field, make you wonder if an early die break or crack once ran through this surface long before corrosion took over. When a coin ages like this, natural wear sometimes hides or distorts mint errors, and that can push collectors to inspect every scratch and shadow under magnification. Look closely at the back of the coin. The reverse shows even more heavy wear. The fields have uneven tones, almost like the coin sat in moisture at one point. Some areas have turned darker, while others stayed lighter, giving it that layered, time-worn look. This is the kind of surface that triggers curiosity because older wheat pennies with rough, uneven surfaces often came from real circulation, not storage. And circulated coins sometimes reveal amazing surprises when examined properly. A rare die chip, a split plating appearance, or doubling hidden beneath the corrosion can turn an ordinary penny into a serious payout. And here's the part that always shocks people. Even a heavily worn 1952 D can climb in value if the right error is present. A simple repunched mint mark, something you can barely see with the naked eye, has reached 4-figure prices many times. Clean, uncirculated examples can go well into the thousands, but the record breakers are the dramatic mint mistakes, off-center strikes, broad strikes, double dies, and the rare, unexpected transitional planche errors that weren't supposed to exist. One of these in top condition could push past $300,000 today if it hit the auction block at the right moment. That's the power of U.S. coin collectors when rarity and demand collide. And even without a known error, collectors love coins that survived rough environments because they're chasing history, not perfection. A coin like this one, with its spotted surface and softened details, feels like it spent decades in someone's pocket while the world changed around it. That emotional pull adds value. People want the story, they want the mystery, and they want the chance, however small, to discover something no one else has spotted yet. Now imagine the same coin in uncirculated condition. Bright luster, zero corrosion, sharp, bold details. A flawless example of a 1952 D wheat penny has already crossed the $25,000 mark at auction. But with an error, that number doesn't just climb, it explodes. Some collectors estimate that the first confirmed major double-die 1952 D in mint state could break the $300,000 mark instantly. And if that discovery is dramatic enough, the kind that hits the news and shakes the collecting world, we're talking even higher. And this is why every older collector, especially those in their golden years, still checks their old wheat pennies. They know that sometimes the ugliest coins hide the biggest surprises. A coin like this, 1952D, might look rough, but it carries the thrill of possibility, and in coin collecting, possibility is everything. Moving on to our next coin, get ready because the surprises keep getting bigger. Moving on to our next coin, and this one grabs your attention the moment you look at it. This 1956D wheat penny carries a kind of battle-worn look that tells you it has lived through decades of pockets, drawers, winters, and long-forgotten places. The surfaces are uneven, the color shifts between dark browns and lighter patches, and there's a scattering of marks that show just how far this little coin has traveled. Even with all that wear, the date and mint mark are still clear enough for collectors to latch onto, and that alone keeps the excitement high. When a coin looks this aged, sometimes it hides something special under all that history. The Denver Mint produced a huge number of pennies in 1956, so most people assume these coins are common. And yes, in average condition, most of them are. But what surprises collectors again and again is how many shocking errors happened during the 1950s, especially at Denver. Wrong planche strikes, doubled mint marks, extreme die cracks, off-center strikes, and even early die state anomalies have all been recorded for this year. The problem is that most of these errors were never noticed at the time. They went into circulation and lived ordinary lives, aging just like the one in front of you. That's why a worn 1956D can still turn out to be a six-figure discovery. The condition of this coin makes you wonder about its past. Look at the fields around Lincoln's portrait. The uneven patches tell you it was exposed to moisture at some point, maybe stored somewhere damp, maybe sitting in a jar in a garage. The reverse shows the same story. Heavy discoloration sits between the wheat ears, and darker shades settle near the rim. This kind of natural aging doesn't hurt collector value when the coin carries an error. In fact, many high-value errors sold at auction look far worse than this. What matters is what the mint accidentally created the day it struck the coin. For a 1956D, the most sought-after error is the rare double-die obverse. Only a few are known, and even fewer are in nice shape. But even in a worn state, these coins can explode past expectations. A heavily circulated one once reached well above $50,000. Now imagine that same doubling in near uncirculated condition. That's when the numbers jump into the hundreds of thousands. And if a dramatic extra thickness, strong separation, or additional die clash is present, collectors go wild. It shocks people when they hear a common penny from the 1950s can be worth more than a new pickup truck. But it happens all the time in the world of rare errors. Another category that turns 1956D pennies into headline makers is off-metal strikes. If even one coin was accidentally struck on a leftover steel planche or a foreign coin blank, the value goes through the roof. That's where your six-figure range becomes real. A confirmed off-metal 1950s Lincoln cent could easily pass $300,000 today, and since so many of these coins have aged and darkened over the decades, an off-metal strike could be hiding beneath the worn surfaces without the owner ever knowing. Collectors also pay huge premiums for strong repunched mint marks. Denver was famous for these in the 1950s. Some RPM varieties show the D stamp 2 or even 3 times. If your coin has any trace of this, even a faint doubling under magnification, the value jumps instantly. A worn but dramatic RPM can bring in several $1,000s. A crisp, high-grade example can reach into the tens of thousands, and the rarest RPMs, those can stretch toward the six-figure mark when the right collectors are fighting for them. Even without a major error, condition plays its own surprising role. A normal 1956D in circulated condition may only bring a few cents, but once you move into uncirculated territory, values rise fast. A bright red example with sharp fields can hit over $2,000, but the highest grade certified examples, the ones with nearly flawless surfaces, have sold for jaw-dropping amounts when they hit the auction block. That's the power of competition. When two collectors both need the best-known example, the price becomes a shock to everyone watching. So while this particular coin shows its age, the story doesn't end there. What you're looking at might be a worn face hiding a rare mistake. It might be a double die waiting to be discovered. It might be a mint mark variety overlooked for decades. And that's the thrill of these older wheat pennies. Even the tired ones can surprise you. Even the damaged ones can change a collector's life with a single powerful error. Next up, we're going even deeper into the world of unexpected value, and trust me, the shocks only get bigger from here. Moving on, the next coin in our lineup brings a whole new kind of surprise. At first glance, this 1929 wheat penny looks like it has lived through a century of rough handling. The entire surface is covered with tiny pits and scratches, almost like it spent years buried in soil or sitting at the bottom of a toolbox. The details of Lincoln's face have softened, the lettering around the rim is faded, and the date, 1929, still sits there bravely holding on through all the wear. But here's the part that turns a simple old penny into something far more interesting. Coins in this kind of condition can sometimes hide the most unexpected stories. When a penny has been handled so heavily, collectors start wondering why it survived at all and what it looked like before time took its toll. 1929 wasn't an ordinary year in American history. This penny was struck just before the Great Depression collapsed the entire economy. People held on to coins tightly, saved every cent, and money circulated harder and longer than in the years before. That means a heavily worn coin like this one makes sense. It lived through the hardest years of the country, and whenever a collector sees a 1929 penny that made it all the way to the present day, especially one as worn as this, they know it likely passed through hundreds of hands during one of the toughest chapters in American life. That alone gives it a historical charm that newer coins simply don't have. But let's talk about what really matters: rarity and potential value. Even in this worn condition, collectors still look at every curve, every letter, every mark on the surface. A 1929 penny in regular circulated shape might only bring a small amount. But when you move into higher conditions, that story changes fast. A bright, uncirculated 1929 penny, free of dings and marks, can easily climb into the thousands, and the finest known examples, graded at the top of the scale, have shocked collectors by reaching prices that push past the $20,000 to $40,000 mark. But that's nothing compared to what can happen when a rare, mint error steps into the picture. This is where the excitement really begins. In years like 1929, mistakes at the mint weren't unheard of. Misplaced mint marks, weak strikes, off-center errors, die cracks, and clipped planchets have all been recorded for this year. A dramatic off-center strike alone can push values into the tens of thousands. A bold die crack or a retained cud can push even higher. And if you ever found a 1929 penny struck on the wrong planchet, the kind of mistake that only happens once in millions, you'd be looking at a payday that easily shoots past the six-figure mark. Some errors in the Wheat Penny series have crossed $300,000 at auction, surprising even lifelong collectors. Looking closely at your coin, the uneven texture and deep surface wear make it tricky to spot subtle errors. But collectors know that sometimes these old, beaten-up pennies hide major surprises. A mint mark repunched under heavy wear, a faint off-center shadow, or a planchet flaw could still be visible under the right lighting. That's why even coins in this condition are never dismissed. They're examined, re-examined, and sometimes discovered to be something far more special than they first appear. Now imagine this same coin, but in a state it left the mint in, untouched, glowing, with original brilliance. For a 1929 penny, that kind of condition doesn't just bring value, it brings a rush of competition. Every serious collector wants one. And the best of the best can break records. Some even argue the right combination of strike quality and rarity could send a top-graded 1929 wheat penny soaring into the $300,000 range, especially with a dramatic error attached. And that's the beauty of these older pennies. A coin that looks rough, worn, and forgotten can still hold a story that connects to something far bigger than itself. And hidden inside that story is the chance, however small, for a life-changing discovery. Next up, we have another coin that pulls us deeper into this incredible journey through America's most unexpected treasures. Moving on to our next coin, we have a 1947 wheat penny that looks like it has carried decades of hard miles. Just look at the surface. The moment this coin hits the light, you can see patches of deep corrosion covering the portrait area, small clusters of dark metal spots spreading across both sides, and soft, uneven edges that show it has lived through heavy circulation. Even the date, 1947, sits almost buried behind years of wear. This isn't the kind of coin someone finds in a mint set. This is the kind of piece that slipped in and out of pockets, cash drawers, and old toolboxes for generations. And that kind of history always brings questions collectors love to chase. What makes a worn 1947 cent interesting is that coins from this period often show hidden mistakes from the mint. Back then, production was fast, demand was high, and mistakes slipped through unnoticed. When a coin looks this rough, it can actually hide a high-value error underneath. The corrosion on this one is mostly spread across the fields, with heavier damage near Lincoln's jaw and shoulder, almost like it sat in moisture for years. But through that damage, the raised elements still peek out, giving just enough shape to see that this coin was struck normally. Even so, coins in this condition sometimes reveal doubled dates, repunched mint marks, or even off-center strikes once cleaned professionally, and any of those can send value into unbelievable numbers. For the 1947 issue, collectors especially hunt for repunched mint marks. On rare pieces, the D was stamped twice, leaving a shadow under the main mint mark. Some of those have sold for tens of thousands, and the very best, in top grade, are pushed by demand into the six-figure range. Even a worn example, if the mint mark variety is dramatic enough, can reach over $40,000. Now imagine a version of that same error in uncirculated condition. Those have shocked collectors by hitting over $300,000 when two determined buyers chase the same piece. This particular coin, judging by the corrosion and the dull brown color, clearly lived many years in harsh storage. But the outline of the mint mark region is still visible. In good light, collectors would examine that area carefully because even a faint repunch can elevate the value of a low-grade coin far beyond normal expectations. And a regular circulated 1947 penny might be worth only a few cents, but a 1947 with a strong RPM error can change every rule. That is the magic of old cents. One tiny detail can turn a pocket find into a once-in-a-lifetime prize. Now let's talk about the big shock factor. There are rumors in the collecting world about a tiny batch of 1947 cents struck on leftover experimental planchets. None have been fully confirmed, but the possibility alone keeps collectors searching. Imagine one of those pieces turning up in a condition like this, corroded, worn, nearly forgotten, but revealed by a test to be struck on an off-metal planchet. A discovery like that could break auction records. We're talking $500,000 or more because rare wheat cent errors consistently outperform expectations. Every older viewer of this video knows the thrill of digging through jars, drawers, or inherited boxes. And coins like this prove why that thrill never fades. The rougher the cent, the more stories it holds, and sometimes the more surprises. Even the uneven color on this one, with patches of darker brown and lighter copper shining through, helps collectors identify if the coin ever reacted to chemicals or unusual metals. That alone can lead experts to test for rare, wrong planchet strikes. When you hear about coins selling for $300,000 or even $500,000, this is exactly the kind of secret behind it. So even though this 1947 wheat penny looks like a survivor pulled from an old barn floor, the possibilities it carries make collectors sit up straight. If it hides a repunched mint mark, value could soar. If it hides a major double die, value explodes even higher. And if it hides a rare off-metal strike, the numbers jump into a level that shocks even longtime bidders. Next up, we move to a coin that pushes the excitement even further. And trust me, you'll want to see how the next one compares. Now we come to a coin that looks simple at first glance, but the moment you see that tiny S mint mark under the date, everything changes. This is a 1944 S wheat penny, and the condition tells a story that only time can write. When you look closely, the entire surface shows years of wear. Soft patches, dull brown color, and small pockets of metal loss show this penny has lived a long, busy life. The fields around Lincoln's portrait have flattened out, and the high points that once carried sharp detail now blend into the surface like fading memories. On the reverse, the lettering is still readable, but not strong. The wheat stalks show heavy wear, especially around the edges, and the center has a smooth, rubbed-down appearance. It's a classic circulated survivor. And for collectors, this worn look actually adds charm because coins like this often come from pockets, paychecks, and ration envelopes during the closing years of World War II. But here's where the excitement begins. The 1944 S wheat penny is famous for one thing: errors. While most pennies from 1944 were struck on recycled wartime brass, every now and then something unexpected slipped through. A few rare 1944 cents were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943, and when one of those mistakes carries an S mint mark, collectors start paying attention. A genuine 1944 S steel penny is one of the biggest legends in U.S. coin collecting, and single examples have stunned the hobby, with prices rising deep into six figures. Some have sold for more than $300,000. Others have crossed the $500,000 mark, and the rarest ones in top mint condition have the potential to reach even higher. That's why every 1944 S demands a closer look, especially when its surfaces show wild color changes or unusual metal patches. Sometimes the smallest unusual spots can hint at something extraordinary hiding beneath the corrosion. Your coin shows uneven toning across the portrait and the reverse. Some areas look darker, while others appear lighter, almost washed out. That kind of mottled pattern often comes from environmental exposure, but seasoned collectors know it can also hide the look of a wrong plancha strike. When a coin from the San Francisco Mint wasn't struck on its intended brass planche, the surface develops its own personality. The color doesn't always match other coins from the same year. The weight feels different, the sound is different, and the value, it shoots into unbelievable territory. Even in normal condition, a worn 1944S like yours can still bring in some collector interest. Circulated examples usually fall between a few cents and a few dollars depending on grade. But in high grades, especially brilliant uncirculated, values climb fast. A clean, bright 1944S with sharp lettering can hit hundreds. A superb gem mint state example has topped tens of thousands at auction, and when an error enters the picture, everything shifts into a higher gear. But the real thrill comes from the possibility. Imagine finding out that this worn coin, the one that passed through so many hands, wasn't struck on the normal metal at all. Imagine learning it was one of those rare San Francisco wartime mistakes that escaped quality control and went unnoticed for decades. A single verified 1944S struck on a leftover steel plancha can bring $300,000, $400,000, even beyond $500,000 if the surfaces are strong enough to satisfy top collectors. That's the kind of number that stops you mid-breath. And it's the reason collectors still study these worn, dusty-looking pennies with such passion. You never know which one will turn out to be the sleeper that everyone missed. When you hold a coin like this, you're not just holding metal. You're holding a moment in history, a time when America was recovering from war, when every cent mattered. And when mint workers were pushing production to meet national demand, mistakes were bound to happen. And those mistakes, those tiny accidents, are now worth life-changing amounts of money. So as we move forward, remember this: condition doesn't tell the full story. These old wheat pennies, even ones that look rough, tired, or worn down, can carry surprises that rewrite their place in history. And this 1944S is the perfect example of why collectors never look away too quickly.